Cowboy refused every bride until he saw the woman his grandmother chose. Jake Thompson lived a life most people only dreamed of from afar. But for him, it was ordinary, simple, quiet, and filled with the rhythm of the land. His days began at the first light of dawn, when the horizon was painted with shades of pink and gold over the endless Texas plains. The air smelled of fresh earth, hay, and the faint tang of horses. The ranch had been in his family for 3 generations, stretching over wide, rolling fields, dotted with grazing cattle and weathered barns. From the moment Jake could walk, he had known this land as his home, as part of him. Every fence, every tree, every stone carried a memory, and he treated it with the respect and care of someone who understood the weight of family legacy. Despite living in a small town, Jake preferred solitude. He was not unfriendly, but he enjoyed his own company far more than the constant chatter of the townsfolk. His mornings were often spent riding his horse, Shadow, across the open fields, checking the fences, and ensuring the cattle were healthy and safe. Shadow was not just a horse. He was a companion, a silent partner who seemed to understand Jake without words. Together, they moved like a single being, navigating streams, hills, and dusty trails with ease. There was a quiet satisfaction in this work, a sense of purpose that few people outside the ranch could ever understand. Jake's reputation as a skilled cowboy spread through the town. He could rope a calf faster than anyone else, mend a broken fence with hands that were rough from years of hard labor, and ride through the fiercest storms without hesitation. Yet, despite his talents, he was humble. He never boasted and never sought attention. Most people admired him from afar, partly because of his abilities, but mostly because of his calm, steady nature. He seemed unshakable, a man content in his solitude and devoted to his work. But the townsfolk also noticed something else. Jake had no interest in marriage. Over the years, many women had expressed their interest, ranging from shy glances at the general store to elaborate attempts at attracting his attention during town dances. Every time, Jake had politely declined. Some of the women laughed it off, assuming he was too shy or too focused on his work. Others whispered that perhaps he was too proud or too stubborn to settle down. The truth, however, was simpler. Jake valued freedom and honesty above all. He knew that marrying without true affection would dishonor both himself and the woman, and he had no intention of doing that. Jake's grandmother, Martha Thompson, watched him closely. She had been a strong presence in his life ever since his parents passed away when he was young. Martha was small in stature, but her eyes carried a sharpness that made people pay attention. She ran the household with care and efficiency, and knew the ranch's inner workings almost as well as Jake himself. Though she rarely interfered, she had a way of knowing things before they happened, understanding people in a way that sometimes seemed like magic. When it came to Jake's future, Martha cared deeply. She wanted him to be happy, but she also understood the importance of family tradition and the continuity of the ranch. Even as a young boy, Jake had admired his grandmother's wisdom. She had a way of telling stories that made the past come alive, and lessons were often hidden in those stories, teaching patience, respect, and the value of hard work. He remembered her telling him, "The land doesn't ask for much, but it rewards those who treat it right." And people are the same, Jake. Treat them with care and they will care for you. These words had stayed with him, guiding his decisions and shaping the man he had become. Jake's life on the ranch followed a steady rhythm. After breakfast, he would head out to the fields, checking on the cattle and repairing fences. He moved with a purpose, aware of every detail in his surroundings, the way the wind shifted, the sounds of distant birds, the smell of rain before it fell. He understood the land because he had grown up with it, and he respected it because it was part of his heritage. During the hottest hours of the day, he would rest under the shade of an old oak tree, drinking water from his canteen and letting Shadow graze nearby. These quiet moments were his alone, times for reflection and for thinking about life in a way that was impossible when surrounded by other people. Despite his solitude, Jake had a few close friends in town. They were men and women who respected his lifestyle and shared his love for the land. Occasionally, they would meet at the local diner for a simple meal, exchanging stories of ranch life, cattle prices, and weather forecasts. Jake enjoyed these visits, but he always returned to the ranch before nightfall. He valued the peace and comfort of home above all else, and the night skies over the plains offered a beauty that the town could never match. Lying under the stars, listening to the quiet rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a coyote, Jake felt a connection to something larger than himself, a sense of belonging that no conversation or town gathering could ever replace. Over time, the women of the town continued to show interest in Jake, each with their own hopes and intentions. Some tried to catch his attention with careful conversation or baking pies, hoping to win his approval. Others sent letters full of admiration and dreams of a shared future. Jake always responded politely, thanking them for their kindness, but firmly stating that he was not ready to marry. Some people called him stubborn, others said he was difficult. But Jake knew that he could not force his heart. He believed that love was not something to settle for, and he had waited patiently, trusting that the right person would come into his life at the right time. Despite this focus on solitude and work, Jake was not lonely. He found joy in small things: the laughter of children visiting the ranch, the gentle nuzzle of shadow, the sight of new calves taking their first steps, and the satisfaction of a fence well repaired. He loved the simple pleasures that life offered and understood that happiness did not always come from grand gestures or romance. Yet, deep down, he knew that family and love were essential parts of life, even if he had yet to experience them fully himself. Martha often watched her grandson with a knowing smile. She understood his heart better than anyone else. She knew he was waiting not for just anyone but for someone special, someone who could match his spirit, respect his independence, and share his values. She didn't rush him. Instead, she guided him subtly, offering advice and sharing stories of her own youth, planting seeds that might grow when the time was right. She believed that life had a way of leading people to each other when they were ready, and she trusted that Jake's patience would be rewarded. As the seasons changed, Jake continued his routine, moving with the rhythm of the land. Spring brought new life to the ranch, with calves being born and wildflowers blooming across the fields. Summer was a time of hard work, mending fences and keeping the cattle safe from the heat. Autumn brought the harvest and the beauty of golden leaves falling across the plains. Winter was quieter, with long nights spent by the fire, repairing tools and reflecting on the year past. Through all these seasons, Jake remained steadfast, living a life that was both simple and full, guided by principles, family values, and a respect for the land that had raised him. Despite the quiet of his days, there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Jake felt it in the wind, in the changing colors of the sky, and in the subtle hints of life all around him. He could not explain it, but he sensed that his life was on the brink of something new. He did not know what form it would take, but he was ready to face it, guided by the lessons of his grandmother and the values he held dear. And so Jake Thompson continued his days on the ranch, a cowboy in the truest sense of the word, independent, skilled, and deeply connected to the land. He had refused every bride so far, not out of pride or fear, but out of respect for himself and others. He believed that when the right person arrived, he would know. Until then, he lived fully, appreciating the beauty of each day, the loyalty of his horse, and the wisdom of his grandmother, who watched over him like a guardian, knowing that life had its own perfect timing. Even though Jake Thompson seemed content with his quiet life, the people in the town could not help but talk about him. At the general store, whispers often floated over the counter, accompanied by gentle laughter or sympathetic shakes of the head. "He's a fine man, but stubborn as an old mule," one woman would say while counting her groceries. "I heard he turned down Mary Johnson's offer again," another would add, shaking her head. Jake's refusal of every potential bride had become a subject of mild gossip and quiet curiosity. People admired him for his skills and character, but they wondered if he would ever settle down. Among all the voices and speculations, there was one person who never doubted that Jake would find his match: his grandmother, Martha Thompson. Martha was sharp-eyed and wise beyond her years. Though she had a small frame and often moved quietly, she commanded attention when she spoke. The townsfolk admired her almost as much as they admired Jake. She had lived a long life full of challenges and joys, raising her own children, running the household, and maintaining the ranch with an iron will hidden under a gentle demeanor. Martha had always understood people, and she understood Jake better than anyone. Martha knew her grandson's heart. She had watched him grow from a boy who could barely hold a rope into a man who could ride through storms and care for the land with unwavering dedication. She had seen how he treated every living creature with respect, how he valued honesty, and how he refused to compromise on the things that mattered most. And she had watched him refuse every marriage proposal that came his way, not because he did not notice the women, but because none of them felt right. Martha believed that love was not something to be rushed. It was something to be recognized, something that resonated deeply and naturally. It was during a quiet morning with the sun rising slowly over the ranch that Martha decided it was time to act. She had heard of a woman named Clara Reynolds, a schoolteacher from a neighboring county. Clara was known for her kindness, intelligence, and gentle nature. She was well liked by everyone who knew her, and her reputation for patience and understanding had reached Martha's ears. Martha believed Clara might be the one who could match Jake's heart, the woman who could understand his love for the land and his need for independence. Martha approached Jake one afternoon while he was mending a fence near the northern field. He looked up from his work as she walked over, her face calm but determined. "Jake," she said softly, "I want to talk to you about someone." Jake wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand and nodded politely. "Yes, Grandma." "I've heard of a young woman," Martha began, choosing her words carefully. "Her name is Clara Reynolds. She's a schoolteacher, kind and patient. She loves the land and understands hard work. I believe she might be someone you should meet." Jake straightened slightly but remained quiet, listening. He had learned long ago not to dismiss his grandmother's suggestions, even when he felt indifferent. Her words carried weight, and she rarely steered him wrong. Still, a part of him was skeptical. He had heard of many women who were praised as perfect matches for men, only for reality to prove otherwise. He was used to politely declining offers without a second thought. "I appreciate your thought, Grandma," he said finally, "but I don't see why I need to meet her." "You know I've turned down every proposal so far." Martha smiled knowingly. "Jake, sometimes it is not about what you see at first. Sometimes it's about taking the time to truly know someone. I have a feeling about Clara. I think she is different." Despite his hesitation, Jake trusted Martha's judgment. She had guided him through life, and her instincts had rarely failed him. So he agreed to meet Clara, if only to satisfy his grandmother and avoid any further worry from her. Meanwhile, in the town, excitement began to build. Word of Martha's plan spread quietly among those who knew her well. People whispered about the possibility of Jake finally finding someone to share his life with. Some were curious to see who the woman would be. Others were simply eager to see if Jake's stubborn nature would finally meet a match strong enough to win his heart. The anticipation added a gentle energy to the town, a mix of curiosity, hope, and admiration for both Jake and his grandmother. Clara Reynolds lived in a neighboring county, teaching at the small local school. Her days were filled with children's laughter, lessons, and the occasional challenge that came with managing a classroom of curious minds. She enjoyed her work and took pride in shaping young lives, but she also longed for companionship, someone who could understand her heart and share her dreams. Clara had grown up valuing hard work, honesty, and kindness, and she had learned to appreciate the beauty of quiet, simple life. She believed that love would find her in its own time, and that rushing into it was never wise. When Martha wrote a letter to Clara, inviting her to visit the Thompson ranch, Clara felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had heard of the Thompsons, a family respected and admired throughout the county. Meeting Jake, she realized, was not just about romance. It was about understanding a life deeply connected to the land, a life full of responsibility, honesty, and tradition. She prepared herself to meet him with an open heart, ready to experience life on the ranch and understand the man who had captured so much attention in the town. The day Clara arrived at the ranch, Jake was busy rounding up cattle in the eastern field. Shadow's hooves kicked up dust as he rode across the grass, and the warm breeze carried the scents of hay and wildflowers. When Martha introduced Clara, Jake observed her carefully. She was calm, confident, and had a gentle way of speaking that immediately caught his attention. For the first time, he felt a spark of curiosity that went beyond politeness or duty. He noticed the way she moved, careful yet graceful, and the sincerity in her eyes. There was a quiet strength about her that resonated with his own nature, a rare quality that few people possessed. Martha watched them closely, sensing the subtle shift in Jake's demeanor. She had expected patience and careful observation, but she could see the spark of genuine interest forming. She did not interfere, knowing that Jake needed to discover his own feelings. Her role was to guide gently, not to force. She understood that true connection could not be manufactured, only nurtured. Over the next few days, Clara explored the ranch, learning about its routines and helping where she could. She fed the calves, learned to ride Shadow under Jake's guidance, and even helped mend fences. Jake, in turn, found himself explaining his work and sharing stories of the land. He had never spoken to anyone with such ease, and he realized that Clara was not just polite or curious. She genuinely wanted to understand his world. Their conversations flowed naturally, and laughter became a common sound across the fields. Evening walks along the river became a shared ritual. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and they spoke of dreams, values, and the simple joys of life. Jake realized that he had never met anyone who listened with such intent, who asked thoughtful questions, and who could share in his quiet contentment without judgment. For the first time, he felt a sense of companionship that did not threaten his independence but complemented it. The town continued to buzz with quiet anticipation. Those who heard of Clara's arrival speculated endlessly. She might finally be the one, people said in whispers, admiration clear in their voices. It will be interesting to see if Jake's stubborn heart can be moved. The town's energy shifted from curiosity to gentle hope, and everyone began to watch the developing bond with interest and quiet excitement. Despite the attention and speculation, Jake and Clara focused on understanding each other. They explored the ranch together, discussed farming techniques, and even shared meals prepared by Martha, whose warm hospitality made Clara feel like part of the family. Jake felt a sense of peace he had never known. He realized that love did not have to be loud or dramatic. It could be quiet, steady, and deeply fulfilling. And with Clara, it seemed possible. Martha, ever observant, knew her instincts had been right. Clara was special, and Jake was beginning to see it too. The subtle changes in his behavior, the way he smiled more often, the gentle teasing that had been absent in his life, and the quiet moments of reflection shared with Clara, were proof that the connection was growing. Martha felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that her careful choice might lead to a lasting happiness for her grandson. As the days turned into weeks, Jake's respect and affection for Clara deepened. He noticed her kindness to every living creature, her patience with the children who occasionally visited the ranch, and her unwavering dedication to her work and values. Clara, in turn, admired Jake's integrity, his devotion to the land, and the quiet strength that guided every action he took. Together, they discovered that shared values, mutual respect, and genuine curiosity could create a bond stronger than passion alone. By the end of Clara's visit, it was clear that something significant had begun. Jake had refused every bride before, but he could not deny the connection he felt with Clara. For the first time, he understood that love could arrive gently, almost unexpectedly, yet profoundly, changing life in ways he had never imagined. And he realized that sometimes, the wisdom of those who knew us best, like his grandmother, could guide us to the happiness we had been waiting for all along. The day Clara Reynolds arrived at the Thompson Ranch, Jake Thompson felt a quiet tension he had not known before. The morning sun was just beginning to warm the rolling fields, casting a soft gold across the grazing cattle. Birds called from the trees, and the wind carried the scent of fresh grass and wildflowers. Jake stood near the barn, checking the feed for the animals, his hands rough and calloused from years of work. Shadow, his loyal horse, nuzzled his shoulder as if sensing the change in the air. Jake had met many women before, but today felt different. There was an unfamiliar anticipation, a strange mixture of curiosity and caution that he could not ignore. Martha Thompson, his grandmother, had been waiting patiently on the porch, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. She had prepared everything meticulously, ensuring that Clara's arrival would be smooth and welcoming. When she saw the small dust cloud rising in the distance, she straightened her posture and smiled. She knew that Jake, despite his reserved nature, would be affected by this visit in ways he could not yet understand. Martha had spent weeks choosing Clara carefully, observing her reputation, her character, and her values. She had hoped that this meeting would plant the seed of a meaningful connection, and now it was time. As Clara stepped out of the carriage, Jake's eyes met hers for the first time. She was calm and confident, carrying herself with a grace that seemed natural, not forced. Her hair caught the sunlight and her eyes sparkled with a quiet curiosity. She looked around the ranch with genuine interest, noting the cattle, the barns, and the wide fields. There was an ease in her presence, a warmth that seemed to fill the space. Jake felt a pull he could not explain, a mix of respect, admiration, and an unfamiliar flutter in his chest. Martha approached, her steps light but purposeful. "Jake," she said softly, "this is Clara Reynolds. Clara, this is my grandson, Jake." Clara smiled politely, extending her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Thompson," she said. Her voice was gentle yet confident, carrying a tone that immediately commanded respect. Jake nodded, taking her hand with a firm, careful grip. "The pleasure is mine, Miss Reynolds," he replied. His voice was steady, but inside he felt an unexpected nervousness. He was used to polite greetings and brief introductions, but there was something about Clara that demanded more than a simple handshake. Martha watched silently, knowing that the initial impression was crucial. She had taught Jake the importance of first encounters, of observing and listening before speaking. She trusted that he would recognize the qualities she had seen in Clara, even if he did not realize it yet. Over the next few hours, Clara explored the ranch with Martha and Jake, observing the daily routines and learning about the work involved in maintaining such a large property. She fed the calves under Martha's guidance, brushed shadow, and helped organize the barn. Jake observed her quietly, noting the way she approached every task with care and attention. She asked thoughtful questions, not out of curiosity alone, but out of genuine interest. Her manner was respectful, her tone sincere, and her presence calming. Jake found himself explaining tasks he had performed countless times before, but with Clara, it felt different. He spoke with more detail, sharing stories about the land, the cattle, and the history of the ranch. He described how his father had taught him to ride, how his grandmother had guided him through difficult decisions, and how every fence and barn carried memories of generations past. Clara listened attentively, nodding and asking questions that showed she was truly engaged. For the first time, Jake felt that his world, the world of the ranch, of hard work and quiet dedication, was being understood by someone outside of his family. By mid-afternoon, the sun was high, and the air was warm with the scent of hay and earth. Jake suggested a ride through the northern fields, a part of the ranch with gentle hills and a small creek running through it. Clara agreed, and they mounted their horses together. Shadow responded to Jake's quiet commands, and Clara's horse followed with ease. As they rode, Jake felt a sense of connection growing, subtle but undeniable. They spoke of simple things at first, the weather, the best spots to graze cattle, and the wildlife they observed along the way. Clara laughed softly when a young calf wandered too close, and Jake felt an unfamiliar lightness in his chest. He realized that her laughter was not just pleasant to hear, it was contagious, making the world around them feel warmer and brighter. Clara, in turn, noticed the care Jake took with his animals, the respect he showed for the land, and the quiet strength that guided every action he took. She admired his dedication, his humility, and the calm confidence that came from knowing who he was. As they reached the creek, they dismounted and allowed the horses to graze. Jake leaned against a tree, watching Clara approach the water's edge. She knelt down, cupping her hands to scoop water for the horses. He noticed the gentleness in her movements, the thoughtfulness in her actions, and the way she observed her surroundings with quiet curiosity. He realized that she was not just polite or skilled. She genuinely cared for the life around her, for the work she was learning, and for the animals she tended. They walked along the creek, side by side, sharing stories from their childhoods. Clara spoke of the small town she had grown up in, of her family, and of the lessons she had learned from her parents. Jake shared tales of life on the ranch, of his father's teachings, and the guidance his grandmother had given him over the years. Each story revealed more about who they were, their values, and their dreams. With every word, the connection between them deepened, forming a bond based on mutual respect, shared experiences, and the quiet understanding of each other's hearts. By late afternoon, they returned to the main ranch house, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Martha had prepared a light meal, and they all sat together at the table. The atmosphere was relaxed, filled with laughter, stories, and gentle teasing. Jake found himself smiling more than he had in years, noticing the small details of Clara's expressions, the warmth in her eyes, and the kindness in her gestures. He realized that he had never met anyone who could make him feel both comfortable and curious at the same time. As evening approached, the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of nature. Jake and Clara walked to the porch, where they watched the sun dip below the horizon. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with a sense of peace and understanding. For the first time, Jake felt that connection he had been waiting for, not loud or demanding, but quiet, steady, and deeply fulfilling. Martha observed them from inside, her heart swelling with quiet satisfaction. She had trusted her instincts, and it seemed they were correct. Clara was special, and Jake was beginning to see it too. The way he watched her, the subtle shifts in his demeanor, and the gentle attentiveness he showed were all signs that something meaningful was beginning to grow. Over the next few days, Clara continued to explore the ranch, helping with chores, riding through the fields, and sharing meals with Martha and Jake. Each day brought new moments of connection, laughter, and understanding. They discovered shared values, mutual respect, and the joy of simple, honest work. Jake realized that love did not have to be dramatic or overwhelming. It could be quiet, steady, and deeply rewarding. And with Clara, it seemed possible. Even as their bond grew, Jake remained cautious. He had been hurt by assumptions and disappointment in the past, and he knew that true connection required time, patience, and understanding. Clara, too, approached their growing friendship with care, valuing honesty, kindness, and shared values above fleeting attraction. Together, they discovered that a meaningful relationship was built on more than appearances or initial impressions. It required trust, respect, and a willingness to understand each other's world. By the end of her first week at the ranch, it was clear that a significant change had occurred in Jake. He had refused every bride before, but he could no longer ignore the feelings stirring within him. Clara's presence had brought a new light into his life, one that complemented his independence rather than threatening it. He realized that he had found someone who understood him, who shared his values, and who could walk alongside him in life without asking him to compromise who he was. The town, meanwhile, continued to buzz with quiet anticipation. Those who heard of Clara's visit speculated endlessly, wondering if Jake's long-guarded heart could finally be moved. People admired the patience and care both individuals showed, recognizing that this was not a fleeting connection but something deeper, grounded in respect, understanding, and shared experiences. As the sun set on the ranch, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange, pink, and gold, Jake stood quietly on the porch, watching Clara tend to the horses. Shadow nuzzled his side, and he felt a sense of contentment and hope he had never known. For the first time, he realized that love could arrive gently, almost unexpectedly, yet profoundly, changing life in ways he had never imagined. And he understood that sometimes, the wisdom of those who knew us best, like his grandmother, could guide us to the happiness we had been waiting for all along. As the days turned into weeks, Jake and Clara grew closer with every shared moment on the Thompson ranch. What had begun as cautious curiosity had blossomed into something deeper, a quiet connection that neither of them had expected but both welcomed. They worked side by side in the fields, mended fences together, and shared long walks under the wide Texas sky. Even the smallest tasks, feeding the calves, checking the water troughs, or brushing Shadow, felt different with Clara by Jake's side. There was a sense of companionship, a feeling that someone understood him completely, and it filled Jake with a quiet joy he had never known before. Clara, too, felt the change. Life on the ranch was unlike anything she had experienced. The air was wide and open, filled with the scents and sounds of nature, and every day brought new challenges and rewards. She loved the work, but more than that, she loved the moments with Jake. The way he explained things patiently, the way he laughed softly at her mistakes, and the way he seemed to notice every detail of her efforts. She realized that his respect for the land mirrored the respect he had for people, and it made her admire him even more. Martha Thompson watched all of this with quiet satisfaction. She had known from the beginning that Clara was special, but seeing the bond between her grandson and the young woman confirmed her instincts. Martha did not interfere, allowing Jake to discover his own feelings, but she offered subtle guidance when needed. She reminded him of the values he had always held dear, the importance of honesty and commitment, and the joy that came from sharing one's life with someone who truly understood. One evening, after a long day of work, Jake and Clara sat on the porch together, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, reflecting in the creek that ran through the ranch. Shadow grazed nearby, and the cattle were settling in for the night. It was a quiet, peaceful moment, yet it felt significant. Jake realized that he could no longer ignore the feelings that had been growing inside him. Clara was not just a friend or a companion, she was the woman he had been waiting for all along. "Clara," Jake began, his voice low but steady. "I've turned down many offers before, but I can't turn this one down. You've changed everything for me. I don't want to imagine my life without you." Clara looked at him, her eyes wide with emotion. She had hoped he felt the same, but hearing the words spoken aloud brought a warmth to her heart she could hardly describe. "Jake," she replied softly, "I've felt the same way. Being here, learning your life, and sharing this land with you, it's more than I ever imagined. I want to be here with you." The words hung in the air, simple yet profound. It was not a dramatic declaration or a sudden rush of passion. It was quiet, honest, and full of meaning. Jake reached for her hand, holding it firmly but gently, and for the first time he felt that the uncertainty and waiting of the past years were behind him. He had found the person who matched his heart, who understood his life, and who shared his values. Over the next few weeks, Jake and Clara spent every moment they could together, exploring the ranch, planning for the future, and simply enjoying each other's company. They talked about their dreams, their hopes, and the life they wanted to build together. Jake realized that love was not about changing who he was. It was about finding someone who complemented him, who could walk beside him and share in both the work and the joys of life. Clara felt the same way, discovering that true happiness came from partnership, respect, and understanding rather than grand gestures or dramatic romance. Martha prepared quietly for the next step. She wanted their union to be celebrated, not just by their families, but by the entire town that had watched Jake grow into the man he had become. She coordinated a small ceremony at the ranch, inviting close family, friends, and neighbors. She ensured that the event would reflect both the simplicity and the significance of the moment, a true reflection of Jake and Clara's lives. The day of the ceremony arrived with a clear blue sky and a gentle breeze. The ranch was alive with excitement and joy, yet it remained peaceful and welcoming. Tables were set with simple decorations, flowers from the nearby fields, and homemade meals prepared by Martha and other family members. The townsfolk arrived one by one, bringing gifts, well wishes, and smiles. Jake and Clara stood together, hand in hand, feeling both excitement and calm. This was a day they had both hoped for, a day that marked the beginning of their shared life. When the ceremony began, Martha stood beside them, her eyes shining with pride and happiness. She spoke of family, love, and the value of patience and understanding. She reminded everyone that true connection was not built on appearances or rushing decisions, but on respect, shared values, and a willingness to understand each other fully. Her words resonated with the guests, and most importantly, with Jake and Clara, reinforcing the foundation of their bond. Jake and Clara exchanged their vows in simple, heartfelt words. There was no need for extravagance or grand declarations. Their lives had already prepared them for this moment. They promised to support each other, respect each other, and share the joys and challenges of life together. Their hands were clasped firmly, their eyes locked, and in that moment the world around them seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, bound by love, respect, and the quiet understanding that they had found the right person for each other. After the ceremony, the celebration continued with laughter, music, and stories shared among friends and family. Children ran through the fields, adults exchanged congratulations, and the ranch seemed alive with happiness. Jake and Clara moved through the gathering together, greeting everyone, smiling, and sharing quiet moments of conversation. They were no longer just individuals living separate lives. They were a team, partners in every sense, ready to face the future together. As night fell, the sky filled with stars, the kind that only appeared over wide open fields far from city lights. Jake and Clara stepped outside, standing together in the soft glow of the moonlight. Shadow nuzzled them gently, and the quiet sounds of the ranch surrounded them, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, and the gentle breathing of cattle settling for the night. It was a perfect, peaceful moment, a reflection of the life they would share. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," Jake said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "I've waited so long and now it feels like everything makes sense." Clara smiled, her hand in his. "I feel the same way, Jake. Being here, sharing this life with you, it's more than I ever imagined. I want to be with you for every day, for every season, for all the years to come." They stood together in silence for a while, simply enjoying the presence of each other. It was a quiet, steady love, not rushed or dramatic, but full of depth and meaning. They had found in each other what they had been seeking: understanding, respect, companionship, and a shared vision for the future. In the weeks and months that followed, Jake and Clara settled into their life on the ranch. They continued to work side by side, sharing both the responsibilities and the joys of the land. They laughed together, faced challenges together, and celebrated the simple pleasures of daily life. Their bond deepened with each passing day, strengthened by shared experiences, mutual respect, and the quiet understanding that had first brought them together. The town continued to admire the couple, not just for the love they had found, but for the example they set. Jake, once seen as stubborn and reserved, was now recognized as a man capable of deep affection and partnership. Clara, gentle yet strong, had become an integral part of the community, her kindness and intelligence evident to all. Together, they represented a partnership built on more than appearances, a life grounded in values, trust, and true understanding. Martha watched her grandson and Clara with quiet satisfaction. Her wisdom, patience, and careful guidance had helped shape a future filled with love and contentment. She had trusted her instincts, and they had proven true. Seeing Jake and Clara happy together, sharing a life full of purpose and joy, brought her a profound sense of fulfillment. Over time, the ranch thrived, not just as a place of work, but as a home filled with laughter, love, and memories. Jake and Clara welcomed visitors, shared meals with neighbors, and continued the traditions of the Thompson family with pride. They knew that life would bring challenges, but they also knew that together, they could face anything. Their love was steady, resilient, and rooted in understanding, a love that had been worth waiting for. And so, the story of Jake Thompson and Clara Reynolds became a quiet legend in the town, a tale of patience, wisdom, and the power of love guided by understanding. It was a story that reminded everyone that true connection cannot be rushed, that the right person often arrives when life is ready, and that happiness can be found in the simplest, most honest moments of life. Jake, the cowboy who had refused every bride, had finally found the woman his grandmother chose. And in doing so, he discovered a love that was gentle, steadfast, and enduring, a love that would carry them through all the seasons of life together.